Veni Creator Spiritus, mentes tuorum visita.
They have asked me to speak about conjugal intimacy or marital intimacy in a world that really doesn't know what intimacy means. The other day, in fact, I had a girl at the classroom where I was teaching, and she asked me, "Hey miss, can you explain to us what kind of sexual intimacy can we have with our boyfriends?" And I'm not gonna tell you what I responded to the girl, but I just kept thinking, these young women today have no idea that intimacy means much more than sexual intimacy. So I want to start first by really defining concepts before we move on. Of course, the first one is intimacy. And let's see what it means. Intimacy, the dictionary says the following. It comes from the Greek intos, which means inside, and also from the Latin adverb intus, which means deeper, or the superlative intimus, the deepest. Well, we get the point, right? We're talking about something deep. And not only deep, but I have to say, we're talking about something that is actually sacred. Christopher West says a lot that if we want to know what's the most sacred thing on earth, we need to ask ourselves, what's the most attacked thing in this world? What's the most outraged item, concept in the world? And there are many, but for sure, one of the things that is most attacked in this world is precisely this sexual intimacy within marriage. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about what corresponds to this conjugal intimacy, and whether you are married and you are listening to me, or if you are a young person just wanting to know more about this, I will speak to you about intimacy through the lens of theology of the body. Let's just make like a shift of the way we understand things. Let's just take some steps back in order to see a wider horizon and a more profound meaning to these two beautiful words, conjugal intimacy or marital intimacy, whatever you understand best. And first of all, I wanted to start with Ephesians 5, meditating a little bit about this passage of the New Testament that Theology of the Body mentions so very much. Ephesians 5. I remember when I went on my first course of TOB, they would always tell me, Ephesians 5. And I would be like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? And at the same time, I would think, maybe one day when I know a lot about theology of the body, I will be able to say as well, Ephesians 5, So what is Ephesians 5? Okay, I'm going to read the most important verses of Ephesians 5 so you may understand why it's so important, right? Ephesians 5:21, 31 to 32. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery, and I mean in reference to Christ and the church. What is this great mystery? It's the mystery of this matrimony, married love, and the call that married love has to be an efficient sign of God's love, Trinitarian love here on earth. It's something sacred. It's something just beautiful, very, very beautiful, that we need to take into account with utmost reverence. Well, the first thing I have to say about Ephesians 5 is how we need to be submissive to one another. And this is a word that the world doesn't understand, and therefore, thus, it doesn't like it. So, but what's the meaning of submitting oneself? What's the root of this word? Or, when St. Paul was writing this for us, what was in his head when he said, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ? Or when he said, women, submit yourselves to your husbands as the heads that they are meant to be? Well, the submission actually means allowing ourselves to be loved. Let yourself be loved. And first, of course, and foremost by God. But then let the other one love you. Allow the other one to love you. Let go and abandon yourself in that love that the other person wants to express to you. It doesn't mean that you have to have a servile attitude, or that you have to work for the other one, or that the other person is not going to respect you. On the contrary, we are talking about the reverence, this beautiful word that speaks volumes to us when it comes to intimacy. The reverence that we have to have for each other, or well, for the ones that are married, of course, and consecrated. So, but I speak a lot to marriages and families and young people as well. So this reverence, John Paul II in his Catechism 131, he says the following: the gift of reverence manifests itself also as a salvific fear of violating or degrading what bears in itself the sign of the divine mystery of creation and redemption. The gift of reverence for the other one, this awe and this admiration and this love that brings me to do anything for you. Next, I want to say how it's important, especially for the ones that are men, and you're wondering, but Rebecca, I'm actually the head of the house and I deserve a little bit of respect, and she should be a little bit more submissive to me. Well, if that is your problem, I just have to tell you the solution is quite easy. And the solution is, listen to this. If your wife feels loved, she will do anything for you, even if it means to submit herself to you. But the big question is, does she feel loved by you? Or is she feeling used by you? I'm not here to judge anyone. I have no idea where you are at when you are actually listening to me. But it's something that we should ponder, and we should understand that love makes everything easier. You know, when you love someone, like when you love Christ, you don't mind if you have to get on your knees and wash his feet. Why am I going to feel bad? I love him so much that that's what I want to do for him. I don't know if any of you watched The Chosen in, I think it was chapter 3 of season 2. And there's a beautiful scene where Christ arrives to the camp, and he's really tired because he has been healing everyone that arrived to the place where he was at. And so he was dead tired and getting to his tent and just wanting to fall right away asleep. And then Mary, you know, from the corner of her eye, she's able to catch how exhausted is her son. And immediately she springs from wherever she was sitting down and she goes there to help him. And it's so tender how she takes off his sandals, and then with water how she cleans his feet. And it's just the beautiful way she was looking at him, and the gratitude, and just saying, thank you, Mom, you're always there for me. I'm just thinking, wow, if this Ephesians 5 is speaking as well to the husbands, and it is saying, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. You need to understand that's the way that a woman needs to be loved. And how did Christ love the church? Well, Christ loved the church giving up his own very life for her. And that's the measure of love that husbands have. And when I look at this, I'm like, wow, if that's the way he is gonna love me, of course I'm gonna be submissive anytime. But especially when we understand that to be submissive is to let ourselves be loved by the other one. So once I have said this, I just have to close this idea of Ephesians 5, just saying how conjugal intimacy sanctifies a couple. What? Maybe you're like, what are you, can you repeat that for me? Yeah. In the same way that we say the ones that are married are called to be holy, and it's not just up to the priests and the nuns and us consecrated women or men to be holy and to be saints. In the same way, John Paul II says the couple actually sanctifies themselves when they are living this conjugal embrace. Well, that's how John Paul II calls this marital union, the conjugal embrace. And so this is an invitation to understand that this sexual act, that this embrace is actually an embrace that demands first and foremost love, and then to be looking after the good of the other one and how to make happy the other person and to love the other person the way the other person needs to be loved. So beware, you are there to love and to exercise virtue and to understand where she's at, to be able to go at her pace and help her to get where maybe you as a man, it's easier to get to. So the whole point is really to be able to live this moment, this beautiful moment in marriage out of love and from love, letting heaven kiss earth, through the presence of God himself, who is love. And not because he's present is going to be less fulfilling and beautiful. On the contrary, he's going to assure that all that is lived in that moment is born out of love and gives to the couple an experience of deep joy that nothing else can give. Deep joy, deep peace, and deep freedom, of serving one another, trying to help each other. Maybe you're wondering, but Rebecca, then what about pleasure? It's something amazing that also gives pleasure. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with pleasure because God invented pleasure. But beware that if you think that the end of this moment is pleasure, you are running the risk of using your beloved one as a means to that end. Pleasure is always a bonus, like a consequence, and something that you should enjoy, of course, because God has placed it there. But it's not the end. The end is to love. And now we're going to see a little bit more about this intimacy in the Song of Songs.